You're watching WSTV Digital Media.
Bobby Patterson did the presentation. It has $8 million worth of.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the October 11 meeting of the Planning Board being conducted on October 25th, I guess. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Today's meeting is being broadcast live on TV 13. It'll be rebroadcast, I'm assuming, at 10 a.m. again Friday as usual, and again 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon.
Sounds good.
Our first order of business today is the consent agenda. These are items for which petitioner has requested withdrawal. Our staff has recommended approval, and no one has signed up to speak in opposition. And I'm not going to go through all of our rules today because I think everything's going to be on consent. But anyone that is addressing the board today will need your name, address, and zip code for the record. And I will remind you that items under Section B of the agenda will require final approval of either the City Council or County Commissioners. So as such, votes taken today will go to those bodies for their consideration. First item of business is the approval of the minutes of the September 13 and 27 meetings. Are there any additions or corrections to those?
Move approval. Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Groves. Any discussion? Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. I now call on Gary Roberts to present our consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. First item is B1, zoning docket W3385. This is a rezoning for a site that's just under an acre in size on the north side of Westbrook Drive. It's undeveloped property, currently zoned RS9. The rezoning request is for Neighborhood Office Special Use Limited. It's located in an area between Business 40 and I-40 that has experienced extensive amounts of RS9 residential to office conversions over the last several years. The area plan recommends office for this request. It is an L request, so they can attach a condition in regard to the Stratford Road impact fee, as I put in the staff report. When I-40 was constructed in the early 90s, the council or the alderman at that time developed a fee structure for properties in this area once they rezoned to a more intensive district, that they would pay a fee based upon the acreage there to compensate for additional road improvements that the city made at that time. So staff's recommendation is for approval, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
No one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing no one, declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval. Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Groves. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next item is B2, zoning docket 3386. This is another undeveloped piece of property located north of 421 and east of Jonestown Road on Mardon Drive. The property is currently zoned RS9. The request is for LBL, Limited Business Special Use. Again, the site is undeveloped. It's located kind of in a transitional area between some industrial zoning to the east and residential zoning to the north. Not shown on this location map here is an electrical substation across the street from Mardon Drive. The area plan does recommend industrial for this. We considered this request, which is for commercial, but it's actually a little bit less intense than some of the uses that could go on this property as per the area plan being industrial. Petitioner has condensed down some of the requested uses there. We feel like it could be a good transitional development there. They have agreed to a lighting condition, and staff recommends approval. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing none, declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval. Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Groves. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next item is B3, zoning docket 3387. This is within the College Village neighborhood located on the southeast corner of Spring Garden Road and Avalon Road. It's currently developed with a two-story building, about 16,000 square feet. It's presently the location of the Diamondback Restaurant. The property has been zoned commercial for many, many years. It's zoned LB right now with little restraints on the property. The request is to go to PBL, pedestrian business special use with a site plan. The area plan does recommend commercial on this property. We feel like the PB district is a much better fit for this pedestrian-oriented neighborhood than the current LB zoning. This is the site plan here showing basically an as-built situation. The building there shown in red, pulled up to the corner in a pedestrian-oriented fashion. The parking shown in gray. And no real changes to the site plan other than the formalization of some parking spaces on both of those streets that I mentioned, and a relocation of the dumpster a little bit to move it a little bit further away from the residential property line. The site plan that you received in regard to the buffering shown in green was based upon the 1991 Board of Adjustment special use permit or variance request for the site. Looking at the site and looking at the topo and the existing 8-foot opaque fence, it's actually around the perimeter now. And also the ordinance allows for an alternative compliance where the planning schedule can be reduced up to 50%. So we agreed with the developer to reduce some of those plantings there. This revised plan shows existing deciduous trees. There's several mature deciduous trees that are there that would probably have been damaged had all those evergreens been planted. Again, there's a pretty significant topographic grade there, and so they're showing some additional deciduous trees and more evergreens there, and we feel like this is a good compromise. So staff does recommend approval, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Is there anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing none, declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval. Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion?
Yeah, I had a question about, I can't quite tell from the site plan that you have here. Is there an existing driveway from Avalon Road to the side of the building?
Well, the circulation is shown in gray there.
Okay, I see. That's
Yes.
the road. So
Yes.
is that existing? It's not new?
That is existing.
Okay.
Right. The only additional asphalt is going to be over in this area here just to widen these spaces just a little bit to meet code requirements. So other than that, the access points remain the same.
Okay. Thank you.
Did we hear any further from the folks that attended from the neighborhood? So there was no further correspondence or?
I received a call about 4 or 5 days after your last meeting that was rescheduled. They just had some follow-up questions, and they kind of had some inquiries about the 1991 Board of Adjustment variance case. That's all that I've heard.
Okay, because I'm a little concerned with all the delays in this meeting of whether people, and there was a significant response to the developers' call there. So, okay, thank you.
Any other comments, any discussion? I have a motion for approval. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Next item is C1. This is a planning board review item for a child daycare center as an accessory to a neighborhood scale church. This is a little over a 27-acre tract shown in yellow there. It's an undeveloped piece of property. It's located on the northwest quadrant of I-40 and Union Cross Road. You may remember there were some rezonings over between Pecan Lane and Solomon Drive just east of Union Cross several years ago. That property is shown there to the right, RM12S and GBS, that is still currently undeveloped. And again, churches in the RS9 district can have daycare centers, but they have to get a special use permit from the Zoning Board of Adjustment with a planning board review first. So that's why you are looking at the site plan. This is the proposed church there. I-40 is to the south. It's about 588-seat church there with the driveway up to Pecan. The play area is shown here in green. And the the site plan does meet ordinance requirements, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Oh, sir.
Second, motion, Mr. Lane, second, Mr. Bryan. Mr. Grubbs and I need to be excused on this. We both have a relationship with the client. So, any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And before anyone leaves, let me just apologize to you folks for having to delay this meeting 2 weeks ago. We hope you understand why we did it, and I hope it didn't create an inconvenience for any of you in your projects. So we appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The petitioner on this next item is the Winston-Salem City Council, and this request would designate the area bounded by US 52, 5th Street, Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, and Business 40, also known as the future Salem Parkway after that road construction project gets completed in a couple years, as GMA 1. Just to give you some background on this item, City Council asked staff to investigate expanding GMA 1 so that it included the entire East End plan. This change would also have the effect of making the entire plan within the City Code's Central Business District. The reason this is important is that the North Carolina General Statutes authorize additional economic development tools for CBDs in cities, such as a greater flexibility for bidding laws and disposition of city property. Just to give you some further background on this, you can see on this map here, the area in the red is the East End master plan area, or I should say there's kind of two different reds on the area. The red circle, the lighter red, salmon color, is the current boundaries of Growth Management Area 1, and the striped area is the subject area of this request. Again, the East End plan is already partially within GMA 1, and the Planning Board did endorse this plan last month. While the GMA boundaries are usually only changed with a new comprehensive plan, such as when we did Legacy 2030 a few years back, limited changes have been made between comp plans, such as a 2005 change that we just saw on the last slide that expanded GMA 1 to the north of this area, and a 2007 change that we did to put the ballpark in GMA 1. The East End plan that you all adopted is supportive of the proposed request, and the request would also give this area flexibility to access GMA 1 provisions for increased development flexibility related to things such as building heights and the tree ordinance. There are other potential issues that the board could consider when making this area GMA 1. The first of those is that additional incentives, while benefiting the area through increased development, could potentially lead to neighborhood gentrification. Second, the area would no longer be covered by the Growth Management Area 2 infill standards, which promote both residential compatibility and non-residential development flexibility. That being said, the GMA 1 standards, as I previously mentioned, also include their own flexibility provisions. Overall, the staff believes that the positives of expanding GMA 1 to this area strongly outweigh any potential issues, and this change would have a positive impact on eastern Winston-Salem. Staff does recommend approval, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff?
Yeah, I had a question. In your report, you mentioned, this was the last bullet point, the one that said that the proposed GMA 1 conversion would cause several existing zoning districts to become inconsistent with their UDO purpose statements. And I just wanted more clarification about that because part of the East End Master Plan involves preserving an existing single-family neighborhood, and it also calls for an addition of 150 new single-family homes. Mm-hmm. So would this change in any way hamper that from coming to be?
It certainly wouldn't hamper that. It would have no practical effects. The staff just wanted to make the board aware that per the UDO, there's certain districts, like those residential districts that we called out in the staff report, that are more geared towards the areas outside of the center city. That being said, East End's a little bit different in that it already has a strong single-family context that the East End Master Plan seeks to keep, while also expanding the mixed-use opportunities here. So we don't think that those are irreconcilable differences. We just wanted to make sure that the board knew all the facts.
Kurt, can you give us any kind of an example of how some of those discussions that you may have been privy to are going to show that there will be a positive impact on East Winston? anything that came out in discussions that you know of? I know it's a broad type of thing, but can you reflect?
Well, certainly, the discussions that I've heard, been involved with through the master planning process, I do think that if the plan is implemented according to schedule, and this GMA1 change is part of that implementation, then I think there's going to be the opportunity to redevelop that East End area, and also trying not to displace any people in the area. The plan calls for the folks who live there now to reap some of the benefits of that redevelopment, and it even talks about things such as a phasing of development, so you can kind of develop sites that are vacant first, and then maybe house some of the people that would be moved from the next site that would be developed in that newer phase that would just be previously developed. So again, I haven't heard of any specific development projects that are proposed for the area at this point, but I do know that having this tool in the toolbox is something that city leadership on the council and in the economic development staffing really believes this will help implement that plan.
Thank you.
Kurt, when we were briefed about this, I believe there was an understanding that the East End plan and the neighborhoods had understood that this was a potential sequel to that. I just wanted it to be on public record that that was the case, and that they were fully understanding that this change was the next step.
That's a good point, Mr. Bryan, and also just to make sure that the board is aware, if you all move forward this item today, it's tracking to go to the same public hearing that the East End Master Plan will be going to the council. So both items will be heard simultaneously, and that was kind of the council's plan, to let the public be aware of both of them at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah. This is a public hearing. Does anyone here would like to speak? I don't think you got a big audience. Okay, then I'll declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval.
Motion, Mr. Lamb. Second, Mr. Bryan. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. Thank you. We'll move into staff report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have got several items I would like to cover under staff report, but I will hold those until the conclusion of the work session downstairs. But I do have one item I would like to cover while we're up here. I would like to make an introduction. I would like to introduce Heather Bratland. Heather joined our team on October 8th this year on our community character team, and she is taking the spot that was formerly held by April Johnson on our historic resources staff. Just a little bit about Heather. She received a Master of Architectural History with a certificate in Historic Preservation from the University of Virginia. She also worked for several years with the Trust. Easy over there. She also worked for several years at the Trust for Architectural Easements in Washington, D.C., where she rose to the position of Director of Operations and Stewardship. More recently, while living in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, Heather was an active member of the Lynn County Historic Preservation Commission, where she developed and implemented a rural preservation initiative. So we're very glad to have Heather on our team, and we're looking forward to working with her.
And Heather, there's a hokey down there. That's what that was all about. So you understand. Okay. All right. Welcome. Nice to have you. Okay. All right. Mr. King, for your first meeting, you did good. So, thank you, sir. About 250.
Chairman, I think we should also recognize the fact that, he gave up a overseas adventure just to be here.
Sort of. Yeah. Okay. All right, then we're going to adjourn this meeting and then go downstairs and reconvene, say at 5 o'clock. So is there a motion to adjourn?
All right, motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We're adjourned.